Okay, hello everybody. We are here and welcome. And by we, I mean, first of all, Joe Firestone, your erstwhile host, and Lisa Theobald, your other erstwhile host. And welcome back, Lisa.
Hey, it's been a while. Nice to be back, everybody.
And Matthew Waldie,
Hi,
our
everybody.
information technologist, the head of our information technology department at Kerberos. And also long time MMT scholar who is examining with us over both last week and this week the interventions of the MMT community in politics. Now, when we say the interventions, what we're trying to do is to distinguish the MMT work itself, the economics work, from the attempts to popularize it or the attempts to consult with other people who are not MMTers or attempts to consult with our legislators. In other words, attempts to intervene in politics by the MMT community. So last week, we went through a number, of bullet points talking about the interventions up until 2016. We ran out of time. We had to stop there. And there have been a lot more intervention since 2016. Then we also had some questions to consider. We wanted to consider roughly how long do we think it's going to take for MMT to become the dominant paradigm, in economics from a policy formulation standpoint. And then the other very important question, is that going to be fast enough to be able to facilitate our survival from the climate emergency? So those were two important questions that we never got to last time, but that we hope to get to tonight. So to facilitate our discussion, I'm going to put up some slides that I developed. Let me just add those to the stream. So we had gone through, of course, slide one and our outlines of MMT interventions. And now we are on the third slide of MMT interventions, but the fourth slide, in total. And that's what you're seeing here. So these are the major things that, from the standpoint of my knowledge base, have gone on since 2016. I want to emphasize that this set of bullet points is going to look different from the standpoint, of other people. I don't have any kind of a monopoly on what has gone on. Ideally, we would have 20 people here putting in all the interventions that have occurred. But these are the interventions from my point of view, and Matt may have some things that he wants to add, and Lisa may have some things that she remembers, that she wants to add. And I hope to get those so we can give a more complete picture of this. But these are the things, that I remember. So I'm going to start the discussion again as of 2016. First, since 2016, that there have been economists for peace and security meetings. Now, there was such meetings before 2016. And they were important. But Jamie Galbraith used to be the chairperson of those meetings. And then when he left as the president of Economists for Peace and Security, he turned over the chair to Stephanie Kelton, and she began to run some meetings that I was at in 2012, 2013, 2014. So there were plenty of meetings before 2000, okay, and 16. But these meetings continued to go on. They were, there was always an annual meeting here that is in Washington, D.C., because I am based in an area close to Washington, D.C. And so I went to a lot of these meetings, and there were always think tank people there from Washington, always policy people from Washington, and the panels were always on policy. There was some MMT people who were on the policy panels, but uh, uh, there were also many other kinds of people. For example, there were people from Social Security Works who often were guests, and there were people from the Economic Policy Institute that were guests. Sometimes there were people from the campaigns that were guests. For example, Bernie Sanders, foreign policy person, in 2020 was a guest in 2018. And there were some other people from campaigns who were there from time to time as well. So the reason why I want to emphasize this is that these were not simply meetings for economists. They were meetings for policy people, and they had an educational impact on the DC community in spreading the MMT point of view. Even though the panels were not explicitly on the subject of MMT, but instead were on the subject of various policy questions or the budget, or how you design budgets, or things like that. The panels were still aimed at the policy community, okay, in DC, and they were having some impact. They were spreading the MMT point of view without always being entirely explicit about the MMT point of view. I see you wanting to say something, Matt.
Oh, no, I mean, yeah, I know that in between later on there, they did, Stephanie did a lot of work at the New School with Rowan Gray, put on a bunch of seminars and panels there in New York, and they were always packed with with policy wonks.
Okay, good addition. That certainly is true. There was one of the Economists for Peace and Security meetings that I was at. I think this was in 2018. This meeting was packed, and the reason why was because they were going to get a speech from Ro Khanna, who came, and he was followed by Bernie Sanders, who came, and there were important people who were in the audience. For example, Jared Bernstein, who had been the chief economist for Joe Biden, okay, in the years of Obama, was there and made comments and addressed also questions, at the MMTers. There must have been 75 to 100 people packed into a room for that meeting, okay, in 2018. Mm-hmm. It was considered important, I think, because, of course, Bernie was contemplating a run in 2020. And the campaigns also were going well for Democrats in 2020. So there was a sense of excitement that there might be some change. going to happen. There was also a speech at that meeting, if I recall correctly, by Jamie Galbraith. That was a pretty significant speech as well. Uh, okay, I seem to remember that the panels that were being run by Stephanie and also the Modern Money Network,
Mhm.
I don't think those were Economists for Peace and Security meetings. That
No,
was
no, it was, but similar people, just in New York.
so this was the New York policy crowd.
Yep.
Okay, at those meetings, I think I saw some of those briefings.
Yeah, they had a lot of it's a New York senator. I can't think of her name. Her staff was there.
Um,
Uh, and they invited a lot of the
program.
economists to come in. So it was there was definitely not just local people listening in. If I'm not so sure that I'm pretty sure that's kind of where AOC started, her affiliation started entering into that picture around that time too.
Yeah, I seem to have to remember. As yeah, I was going to pick this up later on in this slide, okay, or in another slide, that uh, she was friends, okay, with Andres.
Yes,
Okay,
they went to school together.
they went to school together, and as you recall, we did some videos, okay, with Andres,
Yes.
okay, at that time.
Yeah, and I say school, I mean they were at political camps together.
Yes, when they both were 15 years old
Yes.
or so.
So
So
the
they had been friends for a long time.
hmm
And in the run up to the elections of 2018, he was talking to her and was introducing her to the MMT perspective. And he also introduced her to Stephanie,
Yep.
and he introduced her to Pavlina, okay, I believe, as well, and
hmm
maybe to Randy. Okay, but
I
anyway,
wouldn't doubt it. I don't know why I wouldn't.
by the time she ran, she was sort of persuaded that the MMT approach was the right approach.
Yeah, we can get into that eventually. What they say in public compared to what they say behind the scenes, because not only do I know some things from AOC, but I mean I also was early on with Rokana. You know, when I worked with RP, there was a few times that we had run-ins and got a real sense of who he is. So I mean, we can talk about those eventually, but I wanted to get through those. I mean, those are the political things we wanted to discuss.
Yes. Uh, okay, so Kelton, of course, did continuing work for Bernie, okay, in Our Revolution. He started that,
Yep.
with Jane. Uh, but first of all, in the 2016 campaign, but then in the period from 2016 up to the present. Okay, I don't know if Stephanie still is working for him in any formal sense. I suspect that she's not.
Fellow. I mean, I don't think that ever goes away.
Yeah, I don't think it ever goes away too. So I kind of think that she's on call
Yeah.
to Bernie's people. Okay,
That
and
would be my guess.
watching what Bernie does. And whether there will be a further run in 2024. But it's
Yep.
obvious that she's personally close to Bernie, okay,
Yep.
and to Jane, and that even though he doesn't really talk about it much, that he has the MMT perspective. He knows what
And
it is. He
and
understands.
this discussion's pretty good timing since Stephanie just released a actually very pointed message to the Democrats, which I haven't seen her do before.
Are you talking about the Substack today?
Yeah, well, it was day before yesterday, but yes, that where she discussed talks about why is Biden being so proud of cutting the deficit.
I thought we might actually bring up the Substack, okay, at some later
Yes,
time today.
yes,
Yeah.
okay. No, I was just making sure it goes right in with this.
Yes, it does. It goes right in with this very, very well. Uh, okay, so anyway, but Fadl Kaboub and myself did some work for the Green Party Platform Committee in 2018. The work involved first getting involved with some of the state committees, and then we were sponsored by the state committees to give advice to the platform committee. And what this developed into was a situation where we were debating. They had 3 or 4 people who were close to the AMI. That's kind of a positive money sort of orientation, that has been opposed to MMT for quite some time.
Yes.
And the positive money people took over the Green Party in 2010, actually, through the good offices of Dennis Kucinich.
Yep.
Even though he was a Democrat, he had very good contacts with Jill Stein and with the Green Party. And so the AMI position on money became a key for the Green Party. They were following that, and they were interested in resurrecting the bill that Dennis put into Congress in 2010 on reforms to the monetary system.
Mm-hmm.
That had gotten into the Green Party platform. And what Fadl was trying to do, and what I was trying to do, and some of the Green Party people who were very interested in MMT was trying to do, we were trying to change the platform committee so that it would be neutral between the AMI position, okay, and the MMT position. We weren't trying to convert them over to MMT per se. We were just looking for a compromise that they wouldn't be so out front with the AMI type of orientation.
Yeah, I got into a few arguments. And,
yes. So anyway, we fought very hard. It took a considerable amount of time to make the case, but then there was a vote, and we lost that vote by roughly 75 to 25. So the AMI people won, and the Green Party went into the 2018 and 2020 campaigns using the AMI perspective. But there were some Green Party candidates at the same time who were not listening to the Green Party on this and who were running on the MMT perspective.
Mm-hmm.
But Kenneth Mejia in the LA area was doing this, and Rodolfo Cortez.
Yes, Kenneth Mejia has gone on to bigger, better things.
You mean Kenneth?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. In fact, I think he just got elected to.
Yep. Police commissioner, not police, but he's a county commissioner.
Right, county commissioner.
LA.
Right.
His budget is ridiculous. But anyway, he's a very capable person.
He's a very capable person, and he would have been very good in Congress.
He would have been great in Congress. But...
if he could have made it. If I recall correctly, he ran twice on 2 different occasions.
Yes. And he did better every time.
Yes, he did better every time, but altogether, given the fact that he was running against an incumbent, he got something like 25 to 30% of the vote, okay, in the primaries.
Yep.
So he was a strong candidate, okay, and Rodolfo was strong when he ran also.
That's right. Cortez, yes.
Of the vote. Yeah, Rodolfo was such an attractive candidate. Such a nice person.
Yep. Smart.
Very smart, very rational.
Yeah.
He's
policy wonks is when I say that, I mean that they're more interested in policy decisions than they are in being looked at and, the normal politician. They were, to me, they weren't politicians. They were more public servants.
Yeah, they certainly came in with a public service type of orientation. Okay. In Rodolfo's case, he had just gotten a PhD from Stanford
Hmm.
in psychology, no less. A really bright guy.
Yeah.
Uh, okay, so Stephanie Kelton, Pavlina Chernyavas, also Fidelka Boobs, okay, and Rowan Gray all did but candidate consulting from 2018 up to the present, teaching the orientation, okay, of MMT. I think they got called in by Justice Democrats to teach the MMT orientation to some of their candidates.
Hmm.
Okay, and I think they tried to do some training or had some sessions with a considerable number of candidates. I wasn't in the inside of this, so I don't know, exactly how many involved. But I had the impression there were a lot of congressional candidates who were briefed on the MMT orientation. They were quite busy doing that, and they were doing it basically for free to get the orientation spread. And then, of course, came in 2000, okay, and 19. Oh, I should mention that all the squad members got training, okay, in MMT from them. So Presley, and Omar, AOC,
Yep.
certainly Rashida.
Hmm.
Uh, she absorbed actually quite a lot of it, and we'll come back to that, okay, a little later. Then Stephanie's book appeared in 2019. We're all waiting for Stephanie's book. And I think the impact it had, exceeded everybody's expectations.
Yeah.
Okay, because it was, really big as a bestseller,
Hmm.
the economics field. In that category, it was the number one bestseller for a while, I think.
Yes, it was.
And she was very successful in spreading the point of view because the framing that she was able to deliver, um, 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 in terms of the book, was very friendly to people. It was easy for people to understand. So, because of the book, there were thousands and thousands of people who were getting exposed to MMT, as a new thing. And that was probably the first time that we were getting mass exposure, as far, okay, as I can tell. Uh, and so that was enormously successful. Okay, and Pavlina's book came out soon after Stephanie's book, and that had something of an impact, okay, as well. Okay, nowhere near Stephanie's impact, but it's still, a very important book. And Stephanie brought her into Bernie's orbit as well, so that she was doing some work for Bernie Sanders too. I seem to remember her, on one of the committees that I'm sorry, not that Bernie constituted, but that Biden constituted,
Hmm.
in order to get the points of view, of the progressives for his administration. So she and her orientation started having some impact, as well. Though Bernie apparently got closer to Derek Hamilton, but directly, but Derek's orientation uh, is very similar to the MMTers when it comes to the job
Oh,
guarantee, but he's not actually an MMTer.
well, but I guess that's only to keep him politically
Neutral.
sought after. I mean, he was at the New School and did a few of those presentations, and there was no, they were all in lockstep. So I hesitate to say that he isn't, in MMT. I mean, I think he totally acknowledges the description. How's that? He may have different policy ideas coming from that, but I do not believe he questions at all the description.
So let me ask you a question. Was he as forthright in insisting that the job guarantee have a living wage associated with it?
Oh, I don't think he was as insistent because of the calculations that the politicians in power would use.
Right.
Political thing.
And also with respect to to Pavlina as well, during the campaign, they
Yeah.
all talked about the $15 an hour figure because that's
Yes.
what Bernie was talking about.
Yep.
But that was not a standard, in the book by Pavlina and in her
No.
reports. The standard there was always the living wage.
Yep.
And there was no attempt to pin down the living wage because they knew that it was going to be different, in different areas and different also from year to year.
Yeah. I try my best to not get too hung up on political strategy with some people. I can be critical of it, extremely critical of it at times, but I do understand that there is a political agenda or strategy involved in a lot of the way the MMT proponents speak when they are tied with our actual government processes.
Okay. So let us move on then. The next bullet point, okay, was Andres Bernal's consultation with AOC and others, okay, briefing them on MMT. We've already talked about that. Okay, so I don't think there's really anything more to say about that except that those ties are still existing, okay, and that Andres, for example, was active in this current campaign, but consulting for one of the candidates, at least for one of the candidates.
Yeah, and our group released those his interview. That was 4 months before she won her election.
Yes, I remember. That was in 2018, though.
Yeah,
Okay, now I'm
yeah.
speaking now in
He was.
2022, he still continues his
Yep.
consultation with candidates. Okay. Okay, so then of course this would be incomplete, okay, if we did not mention the live stream and the podcast broadcasts,
Mhm.
MMT policies by real progressives.
Of course.
And now I date this from 2016 to the present, but I'm not sure I'm right about that.
He did.
Please
He
like
did them
going on
on
in
his own.
2015.
He did them. Yeah, I would put it. He did them a lot before that, but I think 2015 with the Bernie stuff was when RP came.
Roaring in.
Got its audience.
Right.
Mhm.
And that was when they were also very active in trying to spread the MMT point of view, but to a mass audience.
Yes.
They never became successful enough to fully spread it around, but for a while there was some pretty substantial audiences, like 100, 150, 200.
Yeah, which I think we would all be getting if there wasn't more, quite a algorithm lockdown.
Yeah.
I don't really believe that
No.
we're able to reach what we reached before.
Yeah, right.
That's when the suppression really hit after that, after the election and everything. But that's who pulled me in. Real Progressives was my first baptism. Stephanie Kelton came along for me well, maybe a little prior. I think maybe I found Real Progressives through following Stephanie. Because I was following Warren and the team on, the staff and the campaign team. And that's how I bumped into Stephanie and then bumped into Real Progressives.
Okay. So they've been very important, and they continue to be important. Steve continues to be important in trying
Yep.
to spread things around. Okay, and so I wanted to acknowledge also public live stream work by me and Jeff Epstein and Jeff Ginter, and also Ramona Masacci,
Mm-hmm.
has had some influence with doing a book club sort of thing, and she's done a very good job, with that. And okay, then there were also the Rocco Million live streams, which began to reach some people as well. Okay, and Lisa's live streams, the joint live streams, okay, that we've had. Have I forgotten anybody?
Probably like Stephen Hale and Gabby did their show.
Yeah, Stephen Hale and Gabby did that show, right? That's a relatively recent show.
But
I don't know if you want to bring up Joy. She did a lot of work on RP that was spreading.
Right, but was she doing MMT work?
Well, I mean, she was doing M for All from that standpoint. Sure. I mean, I don't know if it was really based in that. I mean, it was more based in local activism, but I hesitate to say it was completely not that, devoid of MMT. She did have some on there. I'm trying to think of who else was
And then,
involved.
not podcasting, but did we hit on Yarmouth? Maybe we did that earlier, but he really
no, we have not hit on Yarmouth yet. Okay, but well, perhaps I should say so now. Somebody got to Yarmouth. I think it was Randy Ray, that he gave some briefings to the budget committee. Okay, I don't know who connected him to the budget committee. It was probably Stephanie. Okay, but I do know that he gave some briefings to the whole committee. He was brought in by Yarmouth. Okay, and that John Yarmouth really absorbed, the perspective, and had no hesitation about talking about the MMT perspective in the context of Stephanie Kelton's book, and was himself trying to spread the MMT perspective and what he had to say. And he was strikingly good at it as well, strikingly good at putting it in a common sense way. And I think it's really unfortunate that he's going to be leaving the Congress soon, and so we're not going to have that to call on. Just as we get him, we're starting to lose him. So that's unfortunate. Okay, I think.
Oh, thank you, Lana. Ellis Winningham, most definitely.
Yes, Ellis Winningham. Yes, Ellis Winningham.
Actually, that would be how I got interested, to be quite honest.
Okay, cool.
I mean, it was on Steve's show, so it was Steve and him,
Yes.
but Ellis turned me on. That got me understanding it with this discussion about the what money was as a scorekeeper.
Yes, he was very, very good at simplifying the explanations, and he was very, very good at introducing some humor into the discussions. Okay?
Yes, he was.
And,
Yes, it's hard to explain how important it was to understand that there's a unit of account in every country, and that's what we call a dollar. That kind of thing. At that bare level, to be able to move up from there was, that's how I was able to figure it out and put the DOS together. Even though I had been exposed to something earlier than that, but this anyway, that was how I understood it better.
We always wanted him to come over here to Kerberos to do something, but we haven't been able to persuade him.
He's busy.
Yeah, he seems to be happier now doing something else.
Yeah, I suspect you're right.
Yes, I hope that continues to be the case.
Yeah,
Okay, so next question. We're getting into how long will it take? So I found myself asking some questions in terms of how long is it going to take to get into certain of the key financial agencies, okay, of the government. Thinking in those terms, what do we know about whether personnel who represent the MMT point of view were hired by these various institutions, okay, of government? Uh, so I started to think, okay, in those terms. Uh, so I asked the question, what are the evidences that the MMT perspectives have penetrated the Fed?
There. Is that right? That
Huh?
zero interest. Zerp.
Well, okay, so let's talk about this just for a minute because I think there's a difference between having to toe, shall we say, the old guard party lines and yet being knowledgeable. And let me take it even one step further. Speaking in speaking when it's a Fed news conference versus discussing in, say, on camera in an interview. I think that it is undeniable that any politician who is savvy in this area, okay, um, and up and coming and really wanting to be, because knowledge is power, so you can't let a economic policy uh, theory perspective, however you want to couch it, develop in the way that MMT has. Even if you're dead set against it, you have to figure out what's going on with it in order to counter it. Okay, that's really what I am seeing. All right, we have gone from uh, politicians just absolute utter dismissal of it. Even out in social media, no one attacks like they used to when you talk about MMT because people are starting to get it. You don't go through a 2008 crash and then, everybody called it a recovery, but most of the nation didn't economically recover. People have been paying attention for too long now. What is wrong? Why is it wrong? Everybody talks about wage stagnation now. I don't think that that was the norm 8 years ago, right? Most people now, they might not sit down and say, hey, I'm an MMTer. But we don't need that. What we need are people understanding how the Fed policy isn't going to work. Everybody's talking about inflation as being price gouging, as opposed to 20 years ago, where inflation was something that was really complex and oh God, whatever, nobody even understood it, right? And it was a memory from the 70s for a lot of my generation, anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not where we are now. So I think that we've made more progress than we think from the standpoint of, do the politicians and the policymakers and the people in power understand this? And I think the best evidence of it was Biden being willing to hitch his name and his efforts to Build Back Better. Now, they slashed the hell out of it, but let's just be honest. It was in there. Not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but it's there, right? And it didn't pass. But that doesn't mean that everybody isn't more aware of what this is about. They still just don't like it because our monetary policy has always been to control the masses, and corporations now is the name of the game.
The interesting thing is that when Biden first began to push his plans they were very robust in terms of the projected total cost of those plans. There was the 1.9T, for the American Rescue Plan. Okay, but then there was also the original ideas for the infrastructure bill,
Mhm.
which were trillions of dollars, and then the original ideas also for the American Family Plan, which was trillions of dollars, okay, of expenses. Okay, and Biden was, to the extent he's in back of anything, he doesn't fight very hard for
Right,
anything.
right.
But when those were proposed, he was certainly for those. They were proposals being put out by his administration, and they were proposing to spend 7, 8, $9 trillion on those three plans. And there was nobody in the administration objecting at that time. Oh, this is too much to spend, or we can't afford it, or there
Yeah,
are.
the party got behind it, right?
Party got behind it.
The centrist party got behind Build Back Better.
Right. And there were no moans and groans about, oh, there are going to be solvency problems here. We haven't been hearing the solvency objections. So it's almost like the MMTers have won the battle about solvency considerations. The opposition we've been getting, of course, has to do with inflation, what's happened with inflation. Okay.
Yeah, but it wasn't even that happened after the fact. I think then what we have to realize, Joe, is that the old guard came in and said, no, right? Because the old thinking came in and, we're not going to give all this money to, and we can make a ruckus about this because they had to derail. I mean, let's just think about it now from the whole obstructionist pieces of the puzzle. And the old guard and we're going to have to pay taxes on that. I mean, anytime any of the quintessential politicians like Rick Scott and you know who they are come out and start talking ridiculousness about how we can't afford this, they don't do that as much. They used to do that every freaking day.
Yeah, they
Not
used to
hearing
do it
that.
every freaking day, and they did it when the policies were first getting proposed. On this round, starting in 2021, they weren't making those noises at first. They weren't even making the inflation noises at that time. That came later.
Right,
But
right.
you remember
And
that they used to do this in the 60s and 70s as well. That there are some that have a understanding of MMT, but they're also a totally thinking that politically they have no choice but to come out for this type of spending, otherwise they won't have any chance of getting, and then they have to pull that back in order to get the other constituents that they're going to lose by being too forward over here. That's when we're talking about the political thinking going on is actually just keeping people in a stalemate, keeping politicians in a stalemate, and on purpose. Then that's
right.
I don't, and that's a lot to do with their donation base, because
Mhm.
once they get down to it, they can do all these things, but really their donors are telling them, no, this is not a good idea. What are we? We're not a socialist country. We are a capitalist country.
That's right.
Pelosi said that.
We saw that here too,
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
we not
and that's
see it.
the old guard.
Right.
That's the
But
old
we
guard
did not
that
see it.
attrition is going to take care of some of that soon.
We did not
But
see
the
it.
public is more important.
We did not see it when the administration first came in 2021. That was a difference from the 2009 period, from the first, when Obama proposed the stimulus bill, the American Reinvestment and Recovery Act, or Recovery Reinvestment Act, the ARA bill.
Which,
He
by the way, they did distribute that money, but they did not use it for Main Street.
Right,
Like they just totally screwed
right,
them.
right. But the point is, from the beginning, he gave guidance. Well, Larry Summers did anyway. This has to be less than $1 trillion.
Mm-hmm.
It won't
Trillion and a
fly.
half is
It
what they
won't.
were going to do.
Huh?
It was $1.5 trillion.
Well, actually, according to Christina Romer, she recommended $1.8 trillion.
See, I heard the $1.5 trillion. I remember them saying that it had to be at least $1.5 trillion.
Right. Well, as the chairman of the CEA, she was the chairman of the
Oh
CEA at
no, I wouldn't
the time.
doubt it.
She
I'm not.
recommended the 1.8
Yeah.
trillion dollars. Larry Summers
Yes.
would never propose that, but to Obama, he had the impression that Obama wouldn't take anything that was more than $1 trillion.
Was he really worried about Obama, or was he telling Obama?
Oh, I honestly think that
Probably
Obama.
both. Okay, it was
Yeah.
probably both. The point being that those guys at the time had these solvency concerns, which Biden in 2021 no longer had. So that was a mark of the progress between 2009 and 2021.
Okay, can I just interject something, because I think it's relevant, even though it wasn't in the forefront. The solvency concerns because of the crash and the securities, right, and the mortgage securities and all of that. Things really changed, though, Joe, between then and now, with all of the quantitative easing and the way that those securities move through the economy.
Yes.
They're, but the public, the vast majority of the public, did not understand any of that, so that the politicians didn't have to explain it, right?
That's true. That's absolutely true. Okay, let's go back for a minute, okay, to the institution.
But just real quick, I wanted to go back on that because you're right, Lisa. And on top of that, because they didn't have to explain it, it gave them in 08, 09, it gave them this a lot wider view, because most of the reason we don't see this spending right now is because they don't want the public to be educated on their actual role with money, what money actually means.
Yes.
And so that now having to explain, like Build Back Better would have to explain why we have the space, the fiscal space to do this, and that would blow monstrous amount of the water.
They've been spinning for 50 years, right?
Yep.
It would blow everything out of the water. That's why they can't let that.
And it would. It would. It's just like finding life on another planet and saying that it grew completely separate from anything on the earth. I mean, that's the kind of kernel of knowledge that it is.
Yeah. It
no
really
turning
is.
back.
Right. I agree.
So let's go back to the institutions for a while. Okay, clearly the leadership at the Fed, specifically Jay Powell, and most of the people on the board of governors, okay, of the Fed, don't accept MMT. They are dismissive of it, and they make also public comments that are hostile to it, okay, including Jay Powell. Okay, however, in the research area of the Fed, the research employees have put out certain reports from time to time that reinforce the MMT point of view, that validate the MMT point of view. There have been three or four of those reports, which the MMTers seize upon and immediately start quoting, because that research is completely consistent with the MMT point of view. There's a similar phenomenon that has gone on at the IMF as well. The leadership of the IMF has been very, very opposed to the MMT perspective, but the people working for the IMF, the researchers, keep on putting out reports that favor the MMT perspective.
Because it works. then what
Well,
needs
because
to
that's
be
what
done?
they found from their research. They found that the MMT perspective was validated by their research.
Yeah, the
There's some,
description fits
yeah,
what the actual processes are in reality.
yeah, the description fit. Okay, and in England itself, the people from the Bank of England have been putting out reports that are very favorable to the MMT point of view. The leadership of the Bank of England, even one of the leaders, I forget if it was Olivier Blanchard. I think he was with the IMF, but there's one guy, okay, I forget his name. He had been the head of the Bank of England, okay, and right after he
Yeah,
retired, he put out a report that basically said the MMTers' view of the currency was the correct view.
Right, because they're not allowed to say it while they're in power, because it's we. I think we're going to have a shift, and it's going to be. We've been talking about this. Personally, I see a paradigm shift that's already taken off. So
Yes,
it
I think
exponentially goes. The problem that we're going to have right now is the old guard politicians, and that's not. I don't think it's even going to last another 4 years. I don't think it can, because we are headed into unprecedented times.
okay. I certainly hope that you're right. But for now, I just want to make the point that the lower level employees in these institutions, okay, in the Fed, okay, in the IMF, and maybe in some of the other institutions as well, uh, have been reading the MMT stuff. And they know there's validity to the MMT stuff, and they put out some reports of their own, okay, in support of it, without them being explicitly in support of it. They
Right.
put out conclusions and analyses that are completely consistent with it, and then the MMT people pick up on that and they trumpet it around. So I've seen that for the Fed. I haven't seen that in the CBO. Maybe it exists in the CBO
Oh, wait a
too.
minute, though, Joe. They came right out and said that the most positive impact to the economy for the American people would be Medicare for all. And they just did that, what, 3 months ago?
Yeah, the CBO did that, but I don't think that was necessarily because of the MMT perspective.
Well,
Okay,
but
in other words,
Medicare for all is, though.
they did an analysis in the CBO. It was a very conservative analysis. Also, they were using very conservative assumptions, but it was still the fact that they had to come out with the conclusion that if they went for Medicare for all, it was going to save all kinds of money and also be much better for the economy, okay, as well, and save lives. But they didn't seem to be using MMT perspectives to come to that sort of conclusion.
No, they just went through and look, the way I think about it, Joe, a win is a win. I'll take it however I can get it.
Yeah, right. But, in this case, I'm asking the specific question: what are the evidences that MMT perspectives have come into the CBO? Okay, and I'm not sure that there are evidences there, even in terms of the staff.
Okay, but the
The
policy is
CBO may be among the most conservatives of all these institutions when it comes to people who understand the MMT perspective. I'm just advancing that as a hypothesis because I don't see any evidence in their reports, okay, and in the projections by the CBO that there are some MMTers over there who are working with the old guard people. I mean, I still see it dominated by the neoclassicals, and I don't even.
probably, but I don't think that it could possibly be dominated by the neoclassicals entirely for them to come up with that conclusion on Medicare for all in the way that they worded that assumption. Now, I've looked at other things, and I think that there are certain things that are undeniable anymore, right? And yes, they're not looking at it per se, but Medicare for All is a MMT piece of legislation in my mind, okay? Because you're looking at funding healthcare from a federal level down, right? And that policy is put there to provide everyone with a safety net that is going to be government funded.
Yes, I think that is true. But when Medicare for All bills first began to be introduced into the Congress, uh, they were introduced by John Conyers, and Conyers was strictly tax and spend type
Right.
of person, and he was advocating for that because he knew it was going to be cheaper. He knew it was going to save money, and he was worried about saving those 45,000 lives every year. Okay, and so HR 676 for years was being justified on traditional grounds, and I don't see any difference in the way that CBO was justifying it now.
From
So I may look at this all a lot differently than you guys. So I'm just gonna kind of, that's why I'm not saying anything right at the moment. Not that I don't see these things as being people involved, understanding, our reality, and they don't necessarily need to even know MMT to actually be able to follow the financial system and understand how it works, and that they have understood it for a very long time and have run it on purpose for the benefit of one group of one class of people.
exactly.
So I don't really believe that any of those policies are getting through. And that this is just my belief. I'm not, I understand that we're all looking for some kind of hope. My problem is that anything like the Fed has more room to be honest about this. They always have, and they are more honest about it than the CBO, which is completely facing election,
Yeah.
politics. And when you face election politics, in their mind, the people are leaning towards an authoritarian government, and they are going to. That's in their mind. I understand that really isn't the case, but they have not done anything but give us the signal that they are looking at this in a way that maybe they should be taking more control to control things, and because things are falling apart. That's how I see this as being. It's a choice we have coming up, and I don't think that choice is going to be, that lever of choice is going to be open until these politicians realize that the people aren't looking for more control. They're looking for them to not control it and give it to the people. And until they get that, I just personally think that they are doing everything in their mind, even though they may understand the functions of the finances and monetary functions. They are not going to see MMT as a way of control. They're going to see it as a way of allowing MMT to turn into a socialist or people's movement. And I do think that that's going to be not pushed in any way, shape, or form, and that the monetarism will become authoritarianist. I don't know how else to put it, for a little while.
No,
And I'm hoping that doesn't last long,
I
but
agree with you, Matt. I do
that's
agree
how
with
it
you.
feels right now, is that they see the polls that they send out showing that 40% of people, want the president to do more, and control more. And so they think of that as being, even though it was worded in a way that everybody would ask for more help or control, or some leadership to come forward. Really, that's all they're saying, is that they need some kind of leadership that represents them. But that's not how it's being viewed right now. It's being viewed right now as, well, we need to have more control over the situation, or this whole thing's going to go to the point, a really bad place. It's already there, but
Yeah, it is.
they're thinking that it's going to get, oh my God, we got to stop Trump. We got to stop another Trump. And so what they do is they control more. So they end up subverting all that and actually being worse than what they're trying to, and that's what's happening right now.
Right, and I certainly agree with that analysis, but that wasn't the question I was asking.
Well, but
What
that's why I'm saying that, because I was talking about how you're seeing things in those policy, the people in there that understand it, how are they getting into those groups, and I don't believe that they are. I actually think that most of those people that we're seeing this MMT type alignment are just looking at the actual functions of the monetary system and are making these deductions. Remember this, MMT, several different people around the world came up with, understood this process from a separate point of view, not even discussing it with each other. So I think
I
there's a certain amount of this
and
description.
I agree with this too, but once again, okay, the point being,
I agree with our comment. Our recent comment is excellent too. But finish your thought, Joe.
right, when you look at the various institutions that do the financial policy advice, okay, and policy making, I don't see that MMTers have penetrated the CBO very much. I think there's more penetration in the Treasury Department. And the reason why I think that mainly comes from the things that Stephanie sometimes says about her contacts with Treasury, some things Warren Mosler has said over the years, and some of the remarks that Hockett makes, Bob Hockett. He has internal contacts inside of the Treasury Department, and he thinks that a lot of the people who do research there and who work for Treasury do have the same understanding as the MMTers have about how money is actually created. Okay, they know the taxes do not fund spending. That's a very important, critical core
Well,
realization.
and
Okay,
that's why I say groups that are not faced towards directly with political,
Right.
having to be elected, their appointments is different. And I agree. The Treasury is actually filled with probably the most knowledgeable people of our monetary system that exist right now are in the Treasury. And
right.
what's funny is, all the attempts to get rid of the Fed would, as you know, just return all the same functions the Fed does into the Treasury.
And that would
So
be good.
yeah, and that would be great. I don't, but it's not something that necessarily needs to be fought for. That's where we can get into the AMI discussion. That was the problem I had with the AMI. But that the Fed itself are more or less the bankers, a private version of the Treasury, where they understand money and the flow of money, the creation of money to a large extent as well. But their customer is the private banks and financial systems. So they have a different, totally different audience,
Yep. 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 It's so true. And a lot of this comes back to I want to come back to this because it ties into everything else we work on, which is the politicians aren't serving the people anymore. They serve their donors. And their donors are, corporations, and they're bought, and that's how this all works. And it's even out in the open. They talk about it on mainstream media now, right? Biden isn't going to go against the politicians because the politicians have to answer to their donors right now, and we're heading into an election cycle.
Election.
And they say it on CNN now and MSNBC, So
Pelosi's stunt was purely for that, to try and turn her image into something that would be palatable for people to vote for, that wouldn't, it was a completely Republican thing to do, but yet it was something she thought she had to do so that the Democrats would do well in the midterms. That's why I say that there's no way the CBO can be, even attempt to be forward thinking when it comes to monetary. It has to be all about authoritarian.
That is really strange because I had heard or read in one of these articles that she was doing it because she didn't want it to be the case that Newt Gingrich was the only Speaker of the House who had gone to Taiwan. She just wanted. It was just the way it was
That's
expressed.
what I'm saying.
It
I
seems
heard the same
so
thing.
egoistic.
Yeah,
Wait,
because
I'm
she
sorry.
doesn't.
Are we real? Is this really like
That's true.
a popularity competition? Now,
Well,
come on. There's got to be
that's the
more to
whole
this
point.
than
Is
that. She was on a military escort plane. Come
it?
on.
Yes,
The
and
military,
she wants to
but
look tough, and she wants to get
she
Republicans to
wanted to
some of those low hanging Republicans to vote
seem to be
Democrats.
about her legacy,
Yep.
which I thought was. But anyway, that's off.
That said, yeah. Sorry.
To go through the other institutions, the Office of Management, okay, and Budget. I don't see any evidence, okay, of MMT there.
No, I think that's actually where you could focus a lot, even more than the CBO, on being very militant against the cause of it, because they see that as a pure recipe for inflation. They are completely money volume
Yeah,
centric.
that's what I thought, and that's why I wasn't really too hopeful about this. When I go through these institutions, the National Economics Council. First of all, the only economist, on the National Economics Council is the chairperson of the National Economics Council, and that, okay, is Brian Deese right now. And so far as I'm concerned, he's no economist. He's a
No,
policy analyst, who's representing Wall Street, okay, and the bankers and
and
the private
heritage.
equity companies, especially the private equity companies. He
Yep.
came from BlackRock or Blackstone, one
It's
of.
never going to change, is it?
Well, I don't know.
Oh,
It
oh,
seems to me it'll change if we're
Yeah,
it'll
successful
change.
in something.
how are we going to change it, though, if we don't change campaign finance?
We have to change
That's
campaign finance, and the only way we can change the campaign finance is if the people do the dump the incumbents thing. If we really develop that movement and they view the money in politics as toxic and they vote against the money all the time, just on the basis of that issue alone, then the money will be driven out of politics. That's the only thing that's going to do it.
for
Okay.
me, it's a little
Fourth,
different. But I look at it as an activism thing where we have to have shadow banks that are for the people, credit unions, those kind of things that are funding activists to make a actual career out of activism, where we're able to sustain long-term Occupy style activism with actual demands that are, not list just 2 or 3 demands out of every one, and they all are geared towards changing politicians into either converting to a people's party or allowing the real election reform to occur
So are you
before
working on
they
that,
end.
Matt?
That and I can say it all. I love it all I want, but that's the problem, right? I forming these, I can do well at I'm a program manager at heart. So
Yeah.
that's what but it's I don't know how I don't know how I don't know if I'm the best person. I'm not an extrovert.
Well, okay, so
but
this
to pursue that
is a great
question,
idea, though.
what is the mechanism in the shadow banking system, Matt, that's going to fund the activists?
Oh,
Money? What do
don't
you mean?
know. That's something we have to have some kind of form. I'm not saying that I got those answers. That's just the only way I can see us being able to make change without ravaging us with some sort of decline, beyond. And really, I don't know. For me, I see this recession looming as being far more dangerous than everybody is counting on it right now.
I
And
do too.
I don't believe I believe we're all gonna have to hold on tight right
I
now,
think we're
because
going to have to hold on tight too. I don't think it's going to be a recession. It's going to be a depression.
it's yeah, and
It's
it's
a
Really
worldwide.
very
It's really
serious
global.
depression
Really global.
and
And if
worldwide. Okay.
we're gonna have to stop pissing off China, because they're the only ones that are gonna be able to help, and that's just me being honest.
Yes.
Right. And I
Wow.
I
Yeah, sure.
entirely agree. We have to stop pissing off China and Russia. Quit pissing off Russia,
Oh,
too. Both of them.
there's no
All
difference.
of them.
I keep trying to nail this. China and Russia are the same thing now. They are no
HR
different.
HR 5181. If you haven't looked up House Rule, or not House Rule, whatever House, I can't remember what art, but 5181, 2016, I believe. It's a propaganda bill. You gotta read it; it'll blow your mind. You're right. China and Russia are the exact same thing.
Okay.
They're the same, practically the same country now.
Yeah.
Okay. The last institution is the Council, of Economic Advisors. The current Council of Economic Advisors have two people on it who are not really macroeconomists.
Two. That's it. It's a council.
No, the Council of Economic Advisors has three people on it. Okay. At this
There should be nothing but macroeconomists.
third person is Jared Bernstein, who's really a policy analyst, but he's the closest thing to a macroeconomist they have on there. He's also got some MMT knowledge, but he is very, very, very political, and he will not push it. Okay, but he's really the only one that I can see who has any knowledge of MMT on the Council of Economic Advisors. Okay, so that's it. So the OMB, there's nothing. The NEC, there's nothing. There's a little bit in Treasury. There's a little bit in the Council of Economic Advisors. And there's nothing in the CBO.
So when you say there's the OMB, there's nothing, like, who, besides the head of the OMB, we don't really know who's in there, do we?
No, they have a very large staff.
Yeah, they do.
We don't know what the staff thinks, but based on what we hear from reports, budget analyses coming from the staff, we don't see any evidence of MMT perspectives on that.
No, and the writers are hostile with that they add to the bills.
Right, exactly.
To that.
Exactly. But I mean, okay, but again, though, we have to be very careful and remember that you've got the lobbyists adding to the bills. So we're back to the same chicken and egg thing, right? You can have everybody in the OMB being big fans of MMT and nothing's going to come out of there that's favorable, right? I mean, that's kind of my point.
Well, they need to stop tying things to...
At least what you would see, if you see the reports, you would see language that is MMT language in there. You would see framing that is MMT framing in there. Now, that framing may be filtered through the perspectives of the people who run the OMB.
And they have a column on there that has a negative on every bill. So what that's saying is that, this is how much it is in recession spending. They do it on everything. It's their entire line item, and it's what they focus on completely. Look at how much money this is adding to the recession, to the debt spending. This is how much it's adding to the deficit.
Yes.
This is how much it's adding. That's all they talk about.
Right. That's all they talk about. It's like they're still living back in the 1990s. Like they just.
Oh yeah.
Oh, they are.
Yeah.
Oh,
it is. They are all Clintonite. Yep. They think that was the surplus was the greatest thing in the whole wide world. Amen. And all that stuff.
And they think the Clinton administration was the height of democratic skill and excellence.
And now they add in Bush Jr. with all that crap too.
Yeah, they were great.
He was a part of that all of a sudden.
They were all great, all the way back to Reagan. Even they were all awesome.
Yes, all those Bushes, they were great guys.
Yeah. So then the question, the final question. Will the acceptance of MMT be in time to save us? Because we're certainly going to need the MMT perspectives to save us, because before we're through, we're going to be spending $10 trillion a year on the transition. I mean, that's going to be big.
So I really think that what is going to happen is that the crisis is going to get so bad that MMT is here. Those people will be allowed in. We're going to be back in a situation like we were in the 30s and 40s. And we're going to be in a really bad way.
Yeah, but how many years is it going to take? 3,
You know, I don't
4?
know.
I mean, I don't think we have 10 years for this
No,
change
Oh,
we
to
no.
don't.
take place.
We don't. We
I mean,
don't.
it's got to take place in 2 to 3 years.
Certain parts of it do, for sure. Yeah. But then again, 1931 and 32, FDR ran on,
Balanced
balanced
budget.
budget.
Yeah.
So,
Yes,
Yeah.
he ran on a balanced budget. When you look at the deficits, though,
yeah,
uh, in his first 8 years, they weren't really big. He was trying to go back to a balanced budget in
he
1937.
was.
And then he withdrew from it. But if we look at it in terms of percent, okay, of GDP, I mean, what was he running? 3% of GDP, 4%
Yep.
of GDP, 5% of GDP deficits. That's all he was doing in the 1930s.
Yep.
I mean, of course, it completely changed when we had to fight a war.
But he did focus his programs on more people who would spend their money.
He did.
So
He
that
did.
was the
He
difference.
spent on the right things.
Yes, that's the
Spent on
lesson
directly
of
helping.
MMT. That's the lesson of MMT. Is it
Right.
matters what you spend on,
Right.
not how much you spend on it, but what you're buying, what you're using the money for.
What you're
Because
spending, and to be crude about it, if you're not doing trickle down spending, but you're doing direct help,
yep,
it works much better.
Well, and it
and you end up
depends
spending
on the.
less.
Yes, you do, and you
You
also have to
always.
think. You have to think about the public purpose and what we need. You need people to go to work. You need to fix the infrastructure, and you need to fund it. And you need to keep better, cheaper, faster off the table. Educate people, give them the skills, put it back together, and fund it so that it doesn't get screwed up.
Yes.
That's
I
what
put
we
it
need
I
to
put
do.
it this way: the United States government right now is based on a profit.
Mhm.
We are pegged our dollar to a profit. What it should be pegged to is employment. Everybody should have a full-time job available if they want one. We should remove any. So you peg one to jobs or you peg one to profit. Profit causes the problems that we have and eats itself because profit only feels good once it continues to grow. And in order to grow, it has to eat everything around it.
Right, right.
That's why we're in this situation.
Mm-hmm. And stage.
Right. And I think we're at the point where we agree.
We all do.
It seems to me we agree on that. Okay, on all this. I'm trying to get rid of the screen right now.
That's
There
okay.
it is. It doesn't want to go away. Okay, so I finally got there. I did want to look at the comments. We have some comments. We've had very low attendance tonight. I think it's because an election, is going
Oh,
on.
yeah, it is. And we got to look up and see if Jason Call wins. But yeah. And Rebecca Parsons.
Okay, so anyway, I did want to thank the two of you for this discussion. I think it was very, very good.
Yeah, it's fun as always.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it.
Not simply fun, it was also very substantive.
Oh,
And there were very good views expressed, I think. Okay, so I am really happy. So Comrade D says, hello, everyone on Facebook. And Lisa says, hello, Lana. And Lana says, nice to see you, Lisa. Hope things have smoothed out a little for you. And
Things have smoothed out for me, Lana, a little bit. At least for this hour. Maybe time.
Okay, and Lana says, and look, it's Princess Waldie.
I love that. I love that name, by the way.
You know, that came from I was in a band with my father-in-law, and we were called the American Princesses, and I
Oh my
was
God.
Princess Mateo was my moniker.
So, so what instrument do you play?
In that one, I played guitar, keyboard, and sing vocals.
Oh, so you play a lot of stuff.
I string instruments and keyboard keys. Yeah, I can definitely play most of them. I don't read music real fast or real well, so it never became a career. But when I was younger, I did the indie band thing and toured and had a great time.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. Can you do a cover for us of "Do You Hear the People Sing" for this show?
I could. I just need to hear the song. I'm not real super familiar with it. I think I don't. Maybe I'm just not hearing it right.
Oh, I'm sure
But
we can
yes,
get
I
one.
certainly can.
Okay, I will send you a link
Okay.
of people
Yeah.
singing that song.
Okay.
Individual people, lots of people. Okay, I
Yeah,
was
I
trying to
can
get
definitely do
somebody
that.
to do a cover for me because I would like to have that as the theme music for my shows.
Oh, I would be happy to. I'd be honored to. That'd be awesome. I still play music as much as I can.
Okay, I'm sure you have a great singing voice. I mean, I can hear that in your speaking voice.
Yeah, it's distinctive. How's that?
I think that works.
Appropriately modest. So, on a
But
side,
anyway,
I didn't know there were political camps for teenagers. Yeah, they're
yeah,
sponsored by particular groups. Okay, like this was a camp for Hispanics
yep.
in order to teach some of the young people to get ready for the political wars they were going to encounter when they got older. Brandy
Yep.
says, "Hello, everyone. Hello, Brandy. How are you?" And Delana says, "I hope you are doing better, Dolores." Hey, Dolores, I hope you are doing better too. Lana says, Ellis Whittingham wrote some fabulous stuff. Yes, he did. And Lana says, Ellis also pushes for the job guarantee. He once said, if you think the homeless guy standing outside with the sign isn't working, stand out there with him for
Send
a
out
while.
with it.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a good one.
he was dead
Yep.
about that. Russell Henry Quinton Jr. says, and welcome, Russell Henry Quinton. I haven't seen you before. It's my opinion the U.S. government has already adopted MMT. The extreme increase in dollars printed by the Fed in the last few years points to their adoption of MMT and corporate socialism.
So I can feel that real quick.
Go.
Go ahead, Matt.
It is
Go ahead. Feel that real quick.
it is there MMT does not say you have to spend money. There's nothing
Right.
printing the money about MMT.
Right.
It is just it's about avoiding or reducing inflation. It's about controlling inflation. So if you need to spend more than you take in taxes, then so be it. If you don't need to spend more than what you take in taxes, then so be it. It's not an either or uh, situation, or even anything like that. So that's how
No, but
I usually put it.
but I can understand where he's coming from in another way. Um, there's always enough money for the corporations. There's always enough money for Wall Street. That, I think, is the spin that's being put on this comment here. There's just never enough money for the people. There's never
Mhm.
enough money because the focus isn't on us. It's
Yeah.
on corporations, the oligarchy, the banks, blah blah blah.
I can be even more cynical and really say that I don't remember a federal job guarantee being passed. That's
So
really
let
what
me
an
be
MMT.
a little more specific too.
Yeah.
First of all, what MMT is, okay, is it's an approach to economics, to how you do economics.
Right.
It contains various statements that are part of a theoretical framework. It generally does not advocate for policy. The only thing that's a policy aspect of MMT that I've ever seen, okay, I take that back. There are two policy implications of the MMT framework. The first one is maintain your monetary sovereignty, or if you don't
Mhm.
have it, get your monetary sovereignty. That is
Yeah.
probably number one. And number two is you must adopt the program of a job guarantee for people, because if your goals are both full employment and price stability, the solution to your problem is the job guarantee, because the job guarantee is an anchor against inflation. From the standpoint of the MMT framework, Russell, there are many different goals that constitute the public purpose. I have a framework that's got 52 different goals in it. Okay, constituting the public purpose. Okay, there may be all kinds of policies that can be adapted to fulfill one or more, okay, of these goals, but MMT per se doesn't specify such policies. Those policies fall in the area of applied MMT, not in the area, okay, of the approach to MMT. Uh, there is nothing inside of MMT that recommends or that's in favor of corporate socialism, or any socialism for that matter. Okay, now,
Yeah, I don't see it that way quite. I hear what you're saying, Joe. I
okay,
do.
of course, but listen to my qualification. Of course, there are people who are socialists that can fashion policy using the MMT framework. That happens all the time. Okay.
Yes.
But there are also people who are conservatives who can use the MMT framework and can.
But it is anti-corporate fascism.
But I'm sorry, it is anti.
It is
MMT.
anti-corporate fascism.
Yes, it
Yeah,
is. It is
MMT is.
anti-corporate fascism.
There you go. There you go. Absolutely. Perfect.
Right. Okay. So, in other words, your notion that somehow MMT supports the corporate fascism or corporate socialism is not per se true. That's not in the framework. Okay, I mean, it's not a part of it. You have to go outside of the framework to get to those kinds of conclusions. And MMT as a framework is very hostile to corporate fascism. If you look
Because
at
it
the
does things a
MMTers
little differently.
themselves and the policies that they support, there is not one that I'm aware of that supports corporate fascism, okay, in any way.
No, and Lana says a job guarantee sets the wage floor. That is
It
correct.
does. It
It
sets wage floor.
pegs the dollar to employment, which stabilizes the
Okay,
economy.
it does make the wage floor, okay, a living wage.
Yes.
That is specified, okay, in
Yeah,
MM.
and working at 7-Eleven means you make more than you do in the job guarantee. So you're guaranteed to get a huge raise.
I still hope that we can get a jobs guarantee going on that can do two things. It can set the wage floor, but that it can also employ innovators, because corporate America is not interested in innovation. So we have to give people a place to innovate. And what better place than in the programs within a jobs guarantee? because corporations, they want yes people now. They don't want thinkers. Okay? They don't want anybody with any ideas. You just listen to what we want you to do. Period. The end. That's what's going on.
But how close we are to that, I don't believe it's going to be a natural process. I think it's going to take some fight. I hope that fight isn't against a weakened government who is turning into a completely authoritarianism style, or if it's the FDR style where it was, well, we got no other choice but to try this.
I think
So
it's going
I'm
to end up
hoping
being
it's that we don't have any other choice but to try this. But I do fear that it may turn into a widespread depression, and that they may try and control us to the point where we get rid of all of them.
Ugh, I hope not. But it's going to go either way.
Yeah,
It'll go
yeah,
one way
and
or
I
the
mean,
other.
if you were a betting person, I'm not sure how the United States, in its certain form right now, will maintain that form. And I don't know if it's a good or bad thing. I'm not saying that. There's such a stark difference between the center of this country and the coasts, that it's hard to see them as the same country, because everybody's got a right to live the way they want. And if
Absolutely.
that's what they want, that's fine. But we all need to realize that we all deserve that, to pursue happiness, and in as many ways as we want. So, and that's kind of, I think, the breaking point, where we don't have that problem in China, we don't have that problem in Russia, because they are already more authoritarian.
Okay, so Matt, should we say something about Stephanie's Substack today?
Oh, yes, the pride, being proud of your is Biden proud of trying to balance the budget that's going to cause a recession, is pretty much the synopsis, right? And
Right.
she has never pointed that at a specific political figure that headed the party that she is a part of. So I'm giving her a lot of credit. I already think she's great, but she really, that is stepping out in and saying something that needs to be said.
Which I have been begging and pleading for that to happen for a while now. Not
So
to them
let me
specifically.
add
But
a few things to that. Some
take your
background,
gloves off.
first of all, and this relates to what we've been talking about in terms of how long it takes. From the very first year that I got involved with MMT, which was as of the end of 2009, okay, going into 2010, the most basic thing that I learned about MMT, okay, was that when the government has a deficit, the non-government has a surplus,
Mm-hmm.
because it's a zero sum game.
Yep.
When you have a multi-sector type of situation, and you're looking at sectoral financial balances over some period of time, say a year or a month or 6 months or something like that, during that period, some sectors are losing money, some sectors are gaining money. When a sector loses money, there's a deficit. When a sector is gaining money over the period of time, there's a surplus for that sector.
Yep.
If we have only two sectors, a government sector and a non-government sector, if the
Easy.
government is running a deficit,
Mm.
government is giving money to the other sector and losing money itself. And this is not so important for government, because government creates the money. So it can lose as much money as it wants.
The federal government.
The federal government, exactly.
Sorry.
The state governments, the currency issuer.
Yep. Currency issue.
which is the federal government in our system. So if you have a situation where the government has a surplus, that means the government is taking money from the other sector. That means government taxation is taking money from the non-government sector. That means the non-government sector is getting poorer. When the government is running a deficit, that means it is contributing to the non-government sector, and the non-government sector is running a surplus. If it happens for too many years that the government is running a surplus, then more and more of the wealth of the private sector, or the non-government sector, I should say, is being siphoned off to the government. That is
Or loaned out.
good. That is not good. It accelerates the internal conflict of the non-government sector, where the powerful people are grabbing more and more, and the rest of the people are getting less and less. And the more the government surpluses are there, the more this conflict within the non-government sector is accelerated.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a basic lesson that every MMTer learns, almost the first lesson. Okay. So I first learned that lesson at the end of 2009 and going into 2010, when I helped to organize, and it was also my idea, something called the Fiscal Sustainability Conference in DC, which had 5 major speakers. I forget it was 5 or 6, and they were all MMTers. So this was a conference, okay, of MMTers. And this was emphasized throughout that conference. It was on April 28th of 2010. It is now August the 2nd of 2022. And with all the things the MMTers have done, with all the interventions we have talked about, with all the various conferences, both the political conferences and the non-political conferences. In other words, the conferences where there were political interventions and the ones there weren't. With all those conferences and all the literature and all the writing and all the blogs, and there are thousands of MMT blogs. It still hasn't got through the thick skull of the federal government that
No.
you should not be proud of getting lower and lower and lower deficits, because that means you're putting in less and less and less money into the non-government sector, into the economy. They can't get that through their thick skulls. They can't get it. And it's an essential thing to get through from a political point of view.
I know.
How can you expect to continue to win elections when you keep on giving less and less and less money to the non-government sector? That non-government sector has voters. They're going to be unhappy with you. They're not going to be happy with the fact that certain people are getting richer and richer and richer, and others are getting poorer, poorer, and poorer.
Yeah, I hate to do this, but I'm going to have to jet here, but I wanted to leave, and it's right. You are totally right. The last thing is there is one hope, and and I'm bringing this up at the last minute. If China pulls their production from the United States, we will have to reinvest domestically, and that could end up changing our country into what we're looking for.
It could.
That is a real possibility over the next few months.
Oh, God.
So that, and I'll leave you with that as being somewhat of a hopeful situation, because I do suspect that's what China is not going to throw a nuclear bomb. China's not going to. They are very pragmatic, and they will hurt us where it counts, and that's going to be in our pocketbooks. And they own a lot of our production capacity, way more than people want to realize, because they focus on the debt, which has got nothing to do with this. Yes. They don't need our money. They needed our production expertise. They got our production expertise. They're done.
Companies.
Yeah, they are done.
Throw our companies out.
Yep. We will have to bring Nike home and build our sneakers at home,
here.
and that will change our, because we won't take with the jobs that they're going to offer. They're going to have to automate a lot of this stuff, but it's all coming back here, and or or the whole thing goes to crap. I mean, it all will be in a depression. I think that's the choice over the next 6 months,
Right.
and that will cause MMT to
When we
be
see
well
the
known.
economic sanctions from the
Yep.
Chinese, they have not subjected us to economic sanctions. They're in
No.
a perfect position to subject us to economic sanctions.
Today was the first day that they did that in Taiwan.
What did
Today
they do
was the first day that they
specifically?
put those in and said, Taiwan, we're not taking any of your food, which is a
Okay.
huge amount of their GDP. And we're talking 40% of their GDP that they will no longer have in Taiwan because of the stupid stunt by Pelosi. But that's what generates change, right? You have to make the big mistake. And they have been doing this for so long, where we've been unipolar, that we don't need to talk to any or account. We aren't held accountable for anything. That we're able to make all these mistakes over and over again. And this one is, we've gone too far. We are no longer the hegemon monetary in the world. And we are not accepting that, and it's going to kill us, literally. Or
Well,
we bring production back,
let's put it
revive us.
this way. There are hard times a coming unless we
Could.
totally change our foreign
Yes. Yeah. And we have to bring production back, or we are not going to survive this time, because China will not trust us for decades. Period.
Yes, and they will be right not to trust us for decades.
Well, okay,
Oh,
hold on.
We have
China
been
will trust us as soon
complicit.
as we get rid of this Brzezinski regime and we get our
they thought
shit
every
together.
regime. They thought every regime with everything was going to be different, and it never was. We actually have a treaty about this stuff with Taiwan, that we told them we would never do that, what we're doing right now, ever. So there is no trust. They don't. We're gonna need. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to talk over Lisa. It's just it's very hard right
No,
now, because
I get it.
they are not going to trust us for decades.
You know what?
Okay, so
It's
come
just-
back here tomorrow night and we'll talk about this.
Ugh, ugh.
I'm so
Thank
sorry.
you,
We've
guys.
got to talk about it. There's so many
Yeah,
implications.
there's so much more we got to get into. I mean,
Get
the
out,
American people need
So,
to start
The
understanding
in-depth
the
show
value of
tomorrow
this.
night. The in-depth show tomorrow night is the perfect venue to talk about this Pelosi stunt and the implications of it, and why it just contributes to the general idiocy of our foreign policy that must be changed. Because as Lisa just said, we got to get rid of the Brzezinski regime in foreign policy. We're
Yeah.
still playing that name,
Yep.
that game. We just got to retire it. We
Yep.
got to stop.
Along with, and we could really start a vacate the chair campaign. But hey, you guys, I got to jet now because
I really
my
appreciate it, guys. It was a lot of fun, and I'm sorry if I talked over anybody, and
so
I really
we gonna
appreciate the
see you
time.
tomorrow
Me
night.
too. I'm sorry.
I will try. Let me know what time, and I'll see if I got some time. I would love to come on.
Same time. Okay, it's 9
Okay.
p.m.
Yeah, I should be able to get. I might be a little late, but I'll try and get there. It sounds like a great time.
It'd be fun. It'd be fun.
Get it out
So,
at least.
I gotta go. Thank you, Matt.
All right.
And sorry
Take
if
care,
I
guys.
talked over anybody.
All right.
Good night.
No, you're. Take care.
So I'm going to say a couple of final words here. Okay, and those final words are: we are entering a tremendous period, okay, of change. And that change is being triggered by the foolish foreign policies we've seen from this administration. Because if China decides they're going to sanction us by not selling us any more of their goods, where do we stand with respect to China from that particular point of view? We're importing all kinds of stuff from them in return for US dollars. Why do they need those US dollars? because that was a linchpin of their foreign policy. They would get those dollars so they could use them, okay, in international trade and to strengthen their currency, in international trade. So they've been accumulating dollars. I haven't looked to see how much they have now, but I think it's something like 2.5 trillion or $3 trillion, which they have accumulated. So if they need dollars for any kind of trade, they can use those accumulated dollars that they already have. By the way, the accumulated dollars are now sitting in U.S. banks in the form of treasury bonds. Now, we could use sanctions on them and we could freeze those dollars. If we do freeze those dollars, then what would happen is that if people wanted to sell them stuff, other people, then China would have to say, well, we'll buy your stuff, but you have to accept our currency, the yuan, in return for those goods. And guess what? Who's going to accept their currency? I think Saudi Arabia is going to accept their currency. I think Russia is going to accept their currency. So there'll be no food shortages in China. There won't be any oil shortages in China. There won't be any energy shortages. No problems, okay, of that kind. So they're not problems, because I don't think they need very much of what we're selling. We've been using, of course, an awful lot, okay, of what they are selling to us, of their goods. Insofar as we need those goods, we're going to have to produce them here, or we're going to have to buy those goods from other nations that are making the same thing as China. That's going to be inconvenient for us. And as Matt was very valuable in saying, that's going to create a situation where we're again going to have to produce those goods here. And there's going to be a lag. We're going to have a shortage of those goods because it's going to take 2 or 3 years for us to start to make them again here. What's going to happen during that time? The government is going to have to subsidize our businesses to stop them from going out of business. It's going to have to create the money also to make sure the population does not suffer. It's going to have to use some of the techniques that we used in the 30s and that were used in the Second World War to prevent the economy of the United States from collapsing. All that is going to have to happen. They're going to have to use perspectives from the original New Deal and from the Green New Deal and from the MMT economists. I think Matt was very correct to make that point that if things proceed, they are in relation to foreign policy, that is going to produce a pressure to force us to change here and to go towards the MMT-based policies that we would like to see. So, on that note, okay, I'm going to leave you. I've decided what tomorrow night's program, okay, is going to be about. At least a good part of it is going to be about what the implications are of Nancy Pelosi's trip, what kinds of policy changes that has triggered, okay, in relation to China policy, okay, and Russia policy. And I'm going to generalize this a bit. There's a multipolar world that has been emerging and accelerating in response to the Ukraine war. This tussle with China is going to accelerate that movement towards a multipolar world. And the end result is going to be the multipolar world. We can't stop that. And we keep trying to stop it. I think we can't beat them. I think we have to accept the multipolar world and join them. Until we realize that, until we get those kinds of foreign policies, hard times are coming. They're coming. We'll talk more about that tomorrow night. So good night, everyone. Thank you for coming. See you tomorrow.